Okay, this week I'm actually not going to do a typical flip through of a book. I'm only going to talk about the book. Now, I'm late to the party, like usual, and so uh, we'll delve right into it and everything. So, now, the whole idea and the whole concept that I'm going to come at this is, do you need this book? The answer is well, it depends. So this follows the same kind of overview as the original 2014 Player's Handbook. So the question is, do you need it? And I say it depends. Do you have the actual 2014 Player's Handbook? Yes. Are you running campaigns and are you currently in one? Yes. Then chances are you don't necessarily need this. So now the whole idea, and I've gone through this already. So it's akin to 3.5. When third edition first came out, like back in 99, 2000 or so, I know especially me and a bunch of friends that were playing D&D at the time, we were into second edition. At the time, we were all up in arms about third edition coming out. Like, oh, we don't need a new edition. It's completely fine the way it was. Lo and behold, we got into third edition, and we had a complete 180. Oh my god, this is so awesome! Yeah, it's great. It's the best thing since sliced bread and everything. So needless to say, third edition had been out for a good 3, 4, maybe 5 years before they did a 3.5 edition, kind of streamlining that as well. So third edition was the one that pretty much on ramped all the D20 systems that were out there. So books that I've done on previous videos, Farscape, Pathfinder First Edition was based on that. There's a Star Wars had their own D20 version of their their role playing game version of the D20 system. So third edition kind of spawned a whole slew of D20 system books and everything. So then, of course, as things progressed, fourth edition came out, and of course, I have yet to get into fourth edition. So I've heard that it kind of flopped and didn't last that long. So hence coming out of fifth edition in 2015, which kind of built upon fourth edition. Like, oh hey, here we actually go. So with fifth edition coming out in 2015 or 2014, the question, getting back to the question of, do you need this book? It depends. So I'm going to say, if you have the 2014 Player's Handbook and you are currently in campaigns and or are looking to maybe start one and you already have that stuff, I'd say hold off. Now, if you are a brand new player and you don't have the 2014 5th edition player's handbook, and the same thing will be going. I'll reiterate with the DM guide once it comes out. It's already out as of this recording, but once I go over it, and the monster manual when it comes out early next year. So I will say that it depends on whether or not you have the 2014 versions of the core rulebooks, or if you're brand new and you're looking to get into this. So the table of contents, as you can see, is typical. So now they do have. I'll pause and let people look at the artwork and read it real quick. So I have the original artwork. So they do have the alternate cover as well. So getting into the actual kind of meat and potatoes of this, the first part is welcome to adventure. So and the first 6 pages is pretty much what you need using this book, Worlds of Adventure, and then you get into chapter 1, playing a game. It talks about a player, DM, rhythm of play. It gets into the whole concepts of all the games, the ongoing game, the dice, the abilities, the proficiencies, attack rolls, ability checks, saving throws, actions, bonus actions, reactions, social interaction, exploration, combat, damage, and healing. Things like hit points, damage rolls, critical hits, drop into hit points, temporary hit points, conditions, pretty much all that. So all that is pretty much up front. Then in chapter 2, it gets into character creation. So create your character, level advancement. starting at higher levels. Like a campaign that I was recently in, that the group that I was in, we just finished a campaign. We had started off at level 3, and we went through one of the Candlekeep Mysteries one shots. We got through that, and of course we ended up doing a continuation where, to lift the curse on the town that we were from, we had to go into the Shadowfell, and as of this recording, it was this last Thursday. We were successful in lifting the curse and everything, and of course our characters did survive, and so we did set it up for a future adventure and everything. So that gets into in a sense, starting at higher levels. It also talks about multi-classing and trinkets and stuff like that. Chapter 3 is all about the character classes. Now, the big thing I like about this edition, at least with the character classes, is that it has like the subclasses, and like the way it describes the subclasses. Like, for instance, as I flip to page 54, I'll showcase like some of the different. Here you can see like some of the barbarian subclasses. So like for instance, you see here Path of the Berserker, and then you see Path of the Wild Heart. So I'll let people pause and be able to read that and stuff and everything. So I mean, it's probably backwards because it looks kind of backwards from where I'm, but you can flip it and everything. So it gives a nice breakdown of those actual subclasses, and it gives that's what you get at level 3. So now pretty much characters abilities, like you can see here for the barbarian, pretty much ultimately the same and everything. So this is why I say, if you already have like the 2014 versions of these handbooks, you don't necessarily need these. But if like you're a stickler, oh hey, look, I always need to get like a advancement. Like I had third edition, and when 3.5 came out, I had to get that because it's the next evolution and everything. If you're of that mind where you need to get like the latest and greatest whatever, then go for it. Now, where it's books like this shine is like I've said, if you don't have the 2014 core rule books, this is where something like this it comes in handy. So if you're like someone who's brand new, or maybe you're like a veteran player of say 3rd edition, or maybe you're a Pathfinder player, or you've played a bunch of other TTRPGs, ones that I've gone over like a Blue Rose or like a Symborum. I've Marvel, the multiverse game I play. I went over, so it's in my list and everything. I forget the title of it off the top of my head, but also things like Lord of the Rings, the One Ring. So if you're coming from other games, and like you're familiar with TTRPGs and the whole system and everything, something like this would be also great to get into as like a first book, because it's the latest. I mean, it may not the greatest is kind of subjective. Some people say 3rd edition is the greatest. Some people say 5th edition is the greatest. Others will say 1st or even 2nd or whatever. So that's not a debate for up here. Now, I am a fan of 3rd edition, but everyone has their own favorite system and everything. Now, 5th edition I do like, and I've run through several campaigns as a player with 5th edition, and 5th edition is I would say as good as 3rd edition. I just prefer 3rd edition because of this whole streamlined D20 system, and it's probably the one I'm most familiar with. That's why I like it. That's just me, but to each his own. So now each it goes through the pictures I showed with the subclasses for the barbarian. It does that for pretty much all the character classes. So I do have a TikTok under the same name here. You'll see me a nice little witch hat and everything on the profile picture. So if you go follow me there, I do kind of quick little videos on the kind of subclasses. I go over different concepts and stuff. I go over kind of books that hey, look, I've done a flip through of that here. So now with that tangent, getting back into the book, that chapter 3, that's the character classes. Chapter 4 is the character origin. So you get into origin components, background description. So this one is pretty I would say pretty in depth, because it goes over the typical backgrounds, like your acolyte, artisan, charlatan, criminal, entertainer, farmer, guard, guide, stuff like that. So stuff that you find in the 2014 version. So you also got special descriptions for like races, so like Asimir, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goliath, Halfling, Human, Orc, and Tiefling. So you see here in this book, they've actually expanded the, in a sense, the core races or whatever versus what you see in the 2014. So, like for instance, in the 2014, you don't necessarily see like the Goliath or the Orc or the Asimir. There are half orcs, and like they don't mention like the half elf in here, so you can begin to kind of like see the difference. There's tweaks and stuff and everything, so that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't play a half orc or half elf and that all of a sudden they've gone by the wayside. They just taken the races that I just mentioned, kind of focus more on those and stuff. Chapter 5 is all about like the feats, descriptions, origin feats, general feats, fighting style feats, and epic boon feats. Chapter 6 is your good old equipment, coins, weapons, armor, tools, venturing gear, mounts, and vehicles and stuff like that. Then you get into like the chapter 7 for spells. It talks about gaining spells, casting spells, and then of course what's quite in depth is like the spell description. So like starting on page 239, we start with the spell descriptions, and then it goes to page 343. So you can see that like how it's quite in depth with the spell descriptions and everything. So because there are so many different spells that are out there for arcane and divine, and for like all the different classes, that we kind of need a lot of that. So that in-depth description. So like as I'm flipping pages real quick, so you can see pretty much like how thick the actual like spell description of this whole book is. So like a good chunk of that. And so it gets into like also nice description of like the outer realms and the astral planes and stuff like that. So quite possibly using this with the Spelljammer books that I just recently went over, you could use this as well. So now, just like with this, just like the other core rule books, I'll be going over like the DM guide and the monster manual when it comes out. I would say that this is the only one you need, because like as you can see, just like the 2014, it gives you like in a sense monster stats and everything that you can use, and you can use the template to be able to create monsters yourself. So like if you don't necessarily have like a monster that you find in here, then like you can always just use that kind of like a overall stat block and kind of like a structure to, in a sense, create your own. So whether it's vampires, werewolves, gargoyles, liches, whatever. So it does have like the, as you can see, like they get into like the rules glossary near the end to help out with getting into like a kind of like a condensed version of all the rules that we just went over in the previous chapters, especially in chapter 1. And so it kind of flipping through the last few pages real quick, and of course we got the index, so I'll showcase the back and everything. So so here's the front and here's the back and everything. So you got a good nice 50-year mark and everything for the 50 years of D&D. So again, I'll showcase the actual this is the original cover, and then this is the alt cover. So it seems like they're becoming quite popular with like a regular cover and then alternate cover. So I do have some alternate covers of some of the books, and so like the artwork in here is kind of quite cool and quite amazing. So I'm going to showcase some of that and everything. So like here we see some of the pictures for the subclasses for the druid, like the Path of the World Tree and Path of the Zealot right here. So kind of like and of course, good old picture for the druid. So you can kind of see how cool the artwork is in this book and everything. So kind of showcase some of like the artwork in this book real quick, so that people can like be like, oh, this is kind of cool. So again, I'm going to like reiterate, like if you have the 2014 versions of these books, you don't necessarily would have to go out and spend like another $150 to buy all 3 and everything. You're good with that and everything. So I know there are probably going to be people that are going to say like, oh, you absolutely have to, and there are going to be people that agree with me, disagree with me, I'm here to kind of like showcase this book and be like, and kind of like say, hey, if you have those old books, you can kind of hold off on getting these for now. But if you absolutely want them and you want the updated rules and stuff, then by all means go right ahead. Or if you're a first time player, then yes. Then if you're in that situation, then yes. So here's like some more of the artwork and stuff that's in this book. So kind of flip, do some quick flip throughs real quick to try and find like even more kind of artwork. So as you can see, it's, I would say, yeah, it's worth it. But I'm going to end this video. I'm going to reiterate. It all depends on like your situations, and so I'm going to reiterate the, if you have the core rule books from 2014 and like you're kind of tight for money and everything, hold off. But like if you have the money to spare and you want to like you're just starting to finish up like an adventure or a campaign, maybe you got into like the Curse of Strahd, or maybe you went down in the Center of Avernus book, or maybe like the most recent adventure book, you're probably the Vecna Eve of Ruin adventure book that you got that just recently came out earlier this year. You might be just finishing that up and everything, so you might want like, okay, well, here's a new book. Here's like let's get into some of the new stuff and everything. Let's start checking this out and everything. Let's start incorporating this. It'd be kind of like the same. If we go back and harken back to third edition, it could quite possibly be like a 3.5. And so, of course, stuff like this is just in a sense the beginning of like the core rulebook. So the DM guide is out as well, and I will be getting to that over the next several weeks as well. And the Monsters Manual, it will be coming out in early 2025. So most likely I will be picking that up to do like at least a product review like this and everything. So that way people have an idea of what's in it and be like, oh, hey, look, and me kind of doing like with these core rule books, kind of be like, is it worth buying and everything? So again, I think it depends on your situation, and so would it necessarily hurt to be able to pick up these and everything? No, because I do view like it as like the back to the situation with third edition and then transition in 3.5. And this would be great for people that are just getting started out and don't have the 2014 core rulebooks. So you kind of have to look at your situation and like what's best for you and your group. So here I'm just kind of rambling on about this and everything, so you have like at least an idea beforehand before you decide to buy. So you kind of have at least a general idea of what to expect in the books before you actually do make that purchase and everything.